Hello fellow Chimerian, Brian here, and welcome to Fortnite Chapter 7 Season 3 Story Explained. We're about to explain the full story of Fortnite Chapter 7 Season 3 Runners in Secret of the Sprites. So with that said, grab your snacks and drinks or whatever you can find, kick back and relax, and enjoy the full story explanation of Fortnite Chapter 7 Season 3 Runners in Secret of the Sprites. So after the Dark Voyager fully reformed the Zero Point and transformed the Chapter 7 island of the Golden Coast to now known as the Shadow Coast, Jones is now horrified to now see that the Zero Point has been fully restored by the Dark Voyager. The visitor then responds to him by saying that the mission has indeed failed. Jones is starting to now see that somehow the Dark Voyager and the Exalted Ice King somehow found out about the Foundation's plan and was now wondering how did they know about the Foundation's plan. But then the Dark Voyager suddenly appeared in front of both Jones and the visitor, and Jones begins to attack the Dark Voyager, which did absolutely nothing. He then asked the visitor to help him to deal with the Dark Voyager until Jones was then suddenly betrayed by the visitor. And the visitor tells him that everything is according to plan, which Jones is still confused of what's happening. The visitor then takes off his helmet, revealing to be no other than Geno himself. Jones is now shocked that Geno has returned and asks him if this was his plan this whole time. Geno then responds to Jones by telling him that the Seven are still useful to him, but Jones is not. He then kicks Jones off the ledge, thinking that Jones has perished. The Dark Voyager then walks up to Geno and then asks him for new orders, revealing to us that Geno is the Dark Voyager's master. But unfortunately for Geno, Jones has survived and was found by Hope, who quickly rushed him inside of a medical tank at the 7 base of Shaken Sanctuary to recover from his injury from Geno. But then Sloan and the Singularity arrived onto the Shadow Coast, and they were shocked to see that the Zero Point is fully restored, meaning they were too late. And they asked Hope, the Order, and Geno, as the visitor, to know what happened in the events of Chapter 7 Season 2's Shadow Life event. So after Hope, the Order, and Geno, as the visitor, gave Sloan and the Singularity a rundown of what happened in the events of Chapter 7 Season 2 Shadow Life event, Sprites began to appear across the Shadow Coast, which caught Geno's attention, which made him to be very interested to the Sprites. Then a Sprite walked up to Sloan and wants to help us to fight against the Dark Voyager. Sloan then used some mechanical parts to build a mech suit for the Sprite to pilot, so it can help us to fight back against the Dark Voyager. After the Sprite got his mech suit and then became an official member of the Seven known as the Guardian, Hope then walks up to Jones's medical tank and was still completely devastated to what happened to Jones, that someone that she knew who taught her everything and became a mentor slash father figure to her has been hurt. But then she was comforted by Sloan, the Order, and the Guardian, who were also devastated to what happened to Jones, because as you know, Jones helped Sloan to find redemption. He was the only friend that the Order has left, and he helped the Sprites to fight back against the demons of the spirit realm, including the Dark Presence. So yeah, they were also devastated to what happened to Jones, quite similar to Hope. But then Geno, as the visitor, then walks behind them and then looks at Jones inside his medical tank, who is very annoyed that he is still alive, even though we can't really see his expression from his helmet, but we know that Geno is not happy. So after that, they know they have to do this for Jones, even though he has to make a full recovery from his injury from Geno. We then have to find 3 audio logs across the Shadow Coast to now know of what's currently going on with the Seven during this whole destabilized Zero Point situation. After finding the first audio log inside of a metal shed in the outskirts of the Zero Point, we then hear a conversation between Hope and Sloan. Hope then says that the 0 point has been destabilized and the 7 are restless, that we're now facing unimaginable odds. She then tells Sloan that Jones knows that Sloan's the only person that knows the 0 point better than anyone, and Sloan responds to her by telling her that Jones is not wrong, that they do need her. And then Hope responds to her by saying that we do very, very much. And then after finding the second audio log inside one of the buildings at Lifty Lodge, we then hear a conversation between Geno as the visitor and the Singularity. Geno, as the visitor, was happy for the Singularity arriving to the Shadow Coast, but then the Singularity reveals to us that she was supposed to arrive onto the Golden Coast to help us in our operation to stop the Dark Voyager to rebuild the 0 point, but her mech was mysteriously sabotaged. And Geno, as the visitor, gave out a very angry groan, revealing to us that he was the one who sabotaged the Singularity's mech, delaying her arrival. The Singularity then asks Geno, as the visitor, if he has something to say to her, and Geno, as the visitor, then responds to her by telling her that he was very hesitant to recruit someone who was a former Imagined Order member. And he doesn't want her to question her loyalty to the Imagined Order to have it be split. But then the Singularity tells Geno, as the visitor, that she carried no love and loyalty to the Imagined Order, that they were blind by Geno's hubris, and she moved on. And Geno responds by saying to her that he was okay with this, but we know that this was very personal to him, knowing that he very, very took it very personally by the Singularity. And after finding the third audio log inside one of the research stations at Shaken Sanctuary, we hear a conversation between the Order and Geno as the visitor. The Order then was knowing that having Sloan to be part of the 7 is enough, but having the Singularity involved has now have her completely be shocked. And Geno, as the visitor, asks the Order if they are friends now. The Order then responds to him by telling him that even though they don't see eye to eye, she trusts him to have her back. Which means is that the Order is beginning to trust her father Geno, even though that she doesn't know that is him, and he's disguised himself as the visitor. And Geno is glad that his daughter is beginning to trust him. So then, after finding all three audio logs across the Shadow Coast, we then ask Sloan about the situation with the 0 point. Sloan then tells us that she's working on a stabilization team to somehow stabilize the 0 point, and she wants us to be the boots on the ground, and they can't do this without us, and we agreed to help. Sloan then tells us that we need to keep our comms on in order to talk to the rest of the stabilization team. Then the Singularity chimes in and says that we had to be our eyes and ears on the field, and Geno, as the visitor, then chimes in as well, saying that we must tread carefully because the all and the reality situation, which the Singularity is very annoyed with this whole situation, but Sloan then responds by saying that it's very bad that it's very true, which is very true. So our mission from Sloan was then to find her gear at the storage unit at the Battlewood. After collecting 500 gold and opening the storage to get her gear from Battlewood, she said that she's now going to focus on constructing the stabilizer and tells the Singularity to create a super advanced AI to operate it. But then Geno, as the visitor, asks Sloan and the Singularity of why not using Amy, the Seven's own AI, to operate the stabilizer. But then Sloane tells him that they should not do that because, according to her, that she doesn't really trust Amy, especially making coffee. And the Singularity then responds to Sloane by telling her that she does make good coffee, but she will just write insults in the foam. Seeing that Sloane doesn't really trust Amy with anything, especially with the stabilizer. So we then now have to keep Voidblade, Wolf, and Skeletor busy to make sure they don't get caught on to what we're doing, to find out that we're working on a stabilizer to stabilize the 0 point. So after keeping them distracted, Geno, as the visitor, then asks Sloane of what is this very different than her previous project, the Collider, the same one back in Fortnite Chapter 3 Season 2's Collision live event and the Fortnite Marvel Zero War comic series. The Singularity is getting very frustrated with him and telling him to not pick fights. But Geno, as a visitor, then says that it's a very valid question. Sloane then responds to Geno as the visitor's question by telling him that it's a lot of the same theory, but it's reverse. The Collider would destroy an island, but the stabilizer would save it. Meaning that the stabilizer will save the Shattered Coast from the unstable 0 point. After knowing this, we then have to damage opponents to buy Sloane time while constructing the stabilizer. After helping Sloane to buy more time, she is getting more frustrated, seeing that things aren't working, and is wanted out-of-the-box ideas. But then the Singularity suggested that we shouldn't create our own super intelligent AI, that we could just upgrade the shape in order to operate the stabilizer. But then Sloane reminded the Singularity that the Dark Voyager controls that part of the island, which he's talking about Sinister Strip, which is the Dark Voyager's lair, which has the shape as a hostage. But then the Singularity tells Sloane that she will take care of it. Sloane is now relieved of this, and we're not going to get experimental with this, and telling us that we shouldn't chime in very later. But then we decided to go ask the Singularity about the stabilizer, and then she tells us that everything in the stabilizer lab is very tense due to the whole ending of all reality situation. But she's very thankful that we're going to do this mission, which involves the shape, and asking if we are still in, which we are, and now wondering what we have to do. The Singularity then tells us that we shouldn't create our own super intelligent software to operate the stabilizer, telling us that the shape is more complex than it looks. And she's saying that we're going to have to do a daring rescue mission to rescue the shape from the Dark Voyager and ask if we're really in to save the shape, which we still are. But before we get to rescue the shape, we had to do a team building exercise with our little buddies, the Sprites. So after damaging opponents to finish our team building exercise with our Sprite companions, the Singularity complements our skills, which Sloane is very annoyed of. And the Singularity then says that we are ready to head to the Dark Voyager's lair at Sinister Strip to rescue the shape. And then she tells Sloane to focus on her own mission, which is to complete the stabilizer, and we're doing our own mission to rescue the shape. So after heading to Sinister Strip and destroy the Dark Voyager's restraint devices to free the shape, we have finally freed him. And the Singularity now has the idea to download the shape inside of a hard drive for now, and will begin to upload him as Shaken Sanctuary. But to do that, we must now secure Shaken Sanctuary itself in order for the Singularity to download the shape there. After securing Shaken Sanctuary, the Singularity now downloaded the shape there. Sloan then tells the Singularity that her and us work very together very, very well. And the Singularity responds to her by saying that she has an eye for talent. Sloan then asks the Singularity if she's going to stick around this time, and the Singularity responds by saying that she thinks so, that even though the Seven have a very stubborn and dangerous leader, which she's talking about the Foundation, she says that they are very, very loyal and trusting each other, even to someone like her and Sloan themselves, and she's very grateful for that. Then Sloan then says that she's going to check up on us later and tell us what we'll have to do next. But then we decided to talk to the man himself, Geno, as the visitor, about the situation with the stabilizer still. And Geno, as the visitor, says that he's still very hesitant of having two of Geno's proteges, which he's talking about Sloan and the Singularity, about working alongside with him and the Seven. And he then deceives us by telling us that Jones's injury is still unexplained, which we all know the truth that he was the one who caused it. And he wants us to assist him with the stabilizer. And we have no choice but to assist him with the stabilizer. He then wants us to head to Sunken Shore to collect rare items to intercept a contraband which is in the hands of the smug, confident Lucky Duck himself, known as Cluster, and he wants us to find a way to distract him somehow. After finding the rare items that we need to somehow distract Cluster, Geno then chimes in, still as the visitor, tells us that we're going to have to work with him on this next part to complete the stabilizer. Sloan then chimes in and says that the stabilizer needs a power source to power it up. And Geno, as the visitor, says that the sprites are the key to be the power source for the stabilizer because he tells us that he can feel it. So he suggested that to distract Cluster, we must head to his house in the outskirts of Heatwave Harbor in Sunken Shores and destroy his aquarium vault without standing underneath it. And after destroying Cluster's aquarium vault without standing underneath it to distract him, Geno, as the visitor, then chimes in and says that he is having a good time now stepping out the lab for a while, and then for some odd reason he then talks about a chef's and a kitchen and food for some reason. He then says that we now need to learn about sprite reduction, which he is talking about extracting the sprites, of course. So after extracting the 5 sprites he needs, after calling them Little Beast, which is a very, very not cool for him to say that, he then chimes in and then compliments Sloan, saying that she is smart and brilliant, that even though that their objectives are aligned with each other, that her true loyalty is to her own ideals. After damaging opponents with a legendary, mythic, or exotic item, Geno, as a visitor, then chimes in again and then says that it's been so long that he has been hands-on, that he has become a vision holder, a pioneer amongst all realities. That when he was young, he built his dreams with his bare hands, and he can't wait to do it all over again, which is very creepy for him to say that. And then he then wants us to head to the stabilizer. For some reason, he calls it the suppressor, and finally puts the shape inside the stabilizer to finally complete it. And after heading to the stabilizer and finally uploading the shape to the stabilizer, we are now finished, and the stabilizer is now complete, not only fully operational with the shape, but also powered by the sprites. Sloan is happy that we have completed the stabilizer, and for some odd reason, Geno, as the visitor, then talks about the shape being something more than a tourist attraction, while the Singularity made a funny joke about the mech being built like a vending machine. And Geno, as the visitor, then compliments Sloane about being their fearless leader, and Sloane being very embarrassed by that, but Geno, as the visitor, means it, even though it's just him deceiving her in some way, trying to gain her trust. And now the Singularity is now wondering what they have to do next. And according to Sloane, the hardest part, keeping the stabilizer safe from the Dark Voyager. But then, after the stabilizer was complete, Hope then wants our assistance with finding out what really happened to Jones, because she reveals that her visions are slowly coming back. After helping her to get her vision back and also piecing together that the visitor is indeed Geno, she's starting to now see that there is a traitor amongst the seven, and she doesn't know who it is because it could be literally everyone, because all she knows is that Jones saw something that happened. After helping Hope with regaining her visions, we then find a missing audio log inside of a green shipping container at the stabilizer. After interacting with it, we then hear a conversation between Sloane and Hope. Hope then asks Sloane about her opinions with the visitor, and Sloane responds by telling her that the visitor is smart and confident, but also arrogant. And he couldn't make a normal conversation without analyzing her first. And Hope felt the same way, and she asked Sloane if they can still trust the visitor. And Sloane responds to her by telling her that Jones sure taught her one thing: never trust anyone. So Hope is now beginning to not trust the visitor. So after heading back to Shaken Sanctuary and finding Hope's vision mural, she then tells us that she had a nightmare, seeing a dark silhouette of a shapeless man laughing, sounding like the visitor, putting pieces together that is indeed Geno, and saying that we still can't win this fight without Jones. So she decided to have us to do an investigation on the true connection between the Sprites and the 0 Point and how this will help Jones, finding out why Geno was so interested in the Sprites in the first place. After having one of our Sprite companions to go near the 0 Point, she still needs to find out a true connection between the Sprites and the 0 Point, that she can feel it somehow. And after extracting a Sprite to help her to gain more research about them, she's starting to now see the more that we investigate, the more convinced she gets. And the Sprites are somehow the key to restore Jones, but she needs absolute proof, and that is to hack into the stabilizer terminal to gain Geno's research on the Sprites. And after heading to the stabilizer and gain Geno's research on the Sprites, we then made a discovery. We soon find out that the Sprites are created by the 0 Point itself, meaning that the Sprites are created with 0 Point energy, and they want to help restore Jones to get back on his feet, meaning that Geno knew that the Sprites are the key to restore Jones, but he was keeping it a secret this whole time, not revealing to anyone, knowing that this knowledge should not be known to anyone but him. And according to Hope, that if she can give this data to Sloane, that it will help Jones to wake up. Our next mission was then to find 3 more audio logs scattered upon the Shadow Coast, this time from the Order. After finding the first one in the outskirts of Lifty Lodge, Battlewood, Chop Shop, and Calamari Canyon, we then hear a conversation between Hope and Sloane, finding out that somehow they notice that something is off with Jones's medical tank, seeing that apparently the chemicals have been adjusted to the danger zone. And the last person who went to visit Jones that adjusted the chemicals is the visitor, meaning that somehow Sloane and Hope are now seeing that something is very off with the visitor. And Sloane tells Hope that if she didn't see it in time, Jones would be dead. And after finding the second audio log at the outskirts of both Lifetime Landing and Wonky Land, we hear a conversation between Hope, Sloane, and the Order. And it turns out that Sloane's theory was correct. revealing that the visitor is no other than Geno himself, which the Order is not very happy to know that her father is still alive. Now thinking to herself that her sister, the Imagine, died for nothing. But then Sloane and Hope snapped her back to reality, knowing they have bigger problems. That we helped Geno to create the stabilizer to stabilize the 0 point. Then now we have two options. Either help Geno succeed in his plan to stabilize the 0 point, or let the 0 point destroy all of reality as we know it, which is a very tense situation that we're now in. And I have to find the third audio log in the outskirts of Heatwave Harbor. The Order then gives us a rundown, like a short rundown of her father Geno, talking about his obsession with perfect order and perfect reality. She then says that he will do whatever he can to achieve that objective, such as provoking the Foundation, hurting Jones, having our allies to now distrust each other, that he will be the only answer that everyone can look up to. But the Order would not allow her father to win, that he will be stopped by her, and then says that she will give him everything she has got. So yeah, everyone now knows that Geno is now the visitor. Unfortunately, while the Order was about to go take out her father, Geno mysteriously vanished, disappeared from Shaken Sanctuary, meaning he's no longer there anymore. And after entering a mysterious hole that was been dug from the ground of Shaken Sanctuary, it leads to a secret surveillance room created by Geno, meaning he's been spying on us this whole time, and the Order was not happy about it. Like, completely not happy. And she wants us to figure out what her father is up to. So after creating enough noise to distract Geno and the Dark Voyager to make sure they don't know what we're doing, she then wants us to head to Sinister Strip and hack into Geno's listening devices in order to figure out his conversation between him and the Dark Voyager. After hacking both of Geno's logs about his conversation with the Dark Voyager, he then says that the 0 point is still unstable and he needs the stabilizer to completely stabilize it. That way, the 0 point doesn't destroy all of reality because he needs it to complete his objective for a perfect world. He then also reveals in his second log that his daughter, the Order, will find out about it, meaning he knew that the Order will discover his identity as the visitor, and he didn't want her to be his enemy, and she could be his lieutenant because he doesn't want to fight her because he doesn't want to lose another daughter. So he wants her to be his lieutenant in his perfect world. And after showing these logs to the Order, she is not very happy that her father thinks that he could convince her to betray the Seven. So yeah, we now have to know what Geno's plan is up to because it will come very soon. Now knowing that he has now deceived everyone, that his identity has now been revealed to everyone across the Shadow Coast. But we don't know where he is. But then, the unstable event happened. Sloane decides to activate the stabilizer and then begins to stabilize the 0 point. Everything was going pretty well, until all of a sudden, out of nowhere, she started to see that somehow something is wrong with the stabilizer, revealing that it was hacked by no other than Geno himself. Geno somehow hacked the stabilizer. And she now sees that it's very, very wrong. And not only this is affecting the loop, but also affecting us. Pop-ups starting to appear out of nowhere. And we also began to T-pose for seemingly unknown reason. And then Sloane decided to reset the loop, which indeed worked, but somehow something worse happened. The 0 point is gone. And Sloane revealed that somehow Geno took the 0 point. And is no longer there anymore, replaced by a giant game cartridge, revealing pictures of no other than legendary gaming titles such as Sonic the Hedgehog, Mega Man, Pac-Man, and Tetris. So yeah, the 0 point is now gone. Whew. So yeah, that's the entire story of Fortnite Chapter 7 Season 3 Runners and Secret of the Sprites. But the 0 point now gone in Geno, we don't know where he is currently. I just say the story has very becoming tense. And with Chapter 7 Season 4 Override coming this way very, very soon, in 2 days, we will now know what's going to happen next and the story to now see that if Jones not only made a full recovery, but to know what's going on with Geno, to know what happened, including finding out what really happened to the 0 Point itself, because again, according to Sloan, it's gone. Like, Geno took it, which we don't know where it is now. So yeah, thank you all so much for watching this story explain video of Fortnite Chapter 7 Season 3 Runners in Secret of the Sprites. Comment down below what your favorite moments in Fortnite Chapter 7 Season 3 of Runners in Secret of the Sprites, Fortnite Chapter 1 Season 9 OG, Fortnite Save the World, and Fortnite Reload's newest maps. Comment down below what your favorite things to do in Fortnite Creativity by players, Fortnite Ballistic, Fortnite Reload. Comment down below what Fortnite theories you want to discuss and debunk, and I'll try to make videos about them. Subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you won't miss any videos from me. And I'll see all of you in Fortnite Chapter 7 Season 4 Override. Bye!